Game one of the hottest names at the coaching carousel, many expecting that he would be the next head coach of the Commanders. Last season, the Lions finishing in the top 5 in the league in total rushing, passing, scoring. Defensive coordinator Ben Johnson staying in Detroit.
The Detroit Lions went through some agonizing pain this past weekend. No one's going to deny it. The way they went out was, without a doubt, one of the saddest ways I've ever seen a team go out in NFL history. But this is after them building up a tremendous amount of momentum all season long. And if there's been one theme for the Detroit Lions, is that they've been resilient as ever, and this latest news is indicative of such. But at the same time, it's the Washington Commanders' worst nightmare. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop, like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat if you want to get shorter versions of this content. And now that we get all that out of the way, break! For the Super Bowl, PrizePicks is blessing us with an easy way to make $100. All Patrick Mahomes needs is one passing yard in the Super Bowl for a square to hit, which means he's pretty much a free square. First, download PrizePicks and use my promo code Mikerophone when you sign up to get up to $100 deposit match on your initial deposit, and then make these picks really quickly before they change the lines on them. So for me, I'm pairing Mahomes' free square with Isaiah Pacheco, who's had at least one touchdown in his last 5 games, so that's easy, and Christian McCaffrey, who has had more than 88.5 rushing yards in 4 of his last 5 games. Of course, I give away all my picks for free on Instagram, and I highly recommend you turn on notifications for my Instagram story so you can get the picks quickly before they move the lines and you lose your advantage. And thank you, PrizePicks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? This NFL head coaching cycle has been absolute insanity, and no one is going to question it at all whatsoever. I don't think we've ever been so locked in on a head coaching cycle like this before. I mean, 2 legendary Super Bowl winning head coaches got fired in Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll. You can make an argument that Bill Belichick is the greatest head coach of all time. A really good proven head coach got fired in Mike Vrabel, and the Atlanta Falcons finally got rid of the individual that I felt like was holding their team back in Arthur Smith. The Los Angeles Chargers quite possibly hired their greatest head coach in team history by luring Jim Harbaugh out of Michigan. The Carolina Panthers somehow, some way, hit a home run on their head coaching hire of Dave Canales, a young head coach who would invest in Bryce Young's development, who revitalized Baker Mayfield's career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and prior to that, Geno Smith's career with the Seattle Seahawks. The New England Patriots get a really unique form of continuity with J-Rod Mayo as their brand new head coach. This is probably because they noticed that every single time a Bill Belichick assistant head coach takes over, he doesn't really fare too well, but J-Rod Mayo was actually just an inside linebackers coach with the Patriots, and just like Mike Vrabel, played underneath Bill Belichick, and those coaches tend to do pretty well. Antonio Pierce is going to get his opportunity as the Las Vegas Raiders head coach, and the Tennessee Titans lured the offensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals, Brian Callahan, out to be their new head coach. And that's before I get to the Atlanta Falcons, who have absolutely hit a home run in their coaching department. I know Raheem Morris isn't the most splashiest hire, but Raheem Morris with Zach Robinson as your offensive coordinator is a lot to be excited about. Hell, even the assistant coaches are something to mention. Ken Dorsey's getting another chance with the Cleveland Browns. Vic Fangio jumped from the Miami Dolphins to the Philadelphia Eagles. Kellen Moore is now the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, and Arthur Smith got hired as the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nearly every single head coaching opening has been filled, but there are 2 coaching jobs that are still available. The first being the Washington Commanders, and the second being the Seattle Seahawks. Why would they wait this long? Well, they were waiting for the assistant coaches that were coaching in the AFC and NFC championship games to become available. In this particular case, Vance McDonald was the prime head coaching candidate from the Baltimore Ravens, and in the case of the Detroit Lions, Ben Johnson was the prime head coaching candidate from the Detroit Lions. Now, Ben Johnson was the most sought out head coaching candidate in this entire cycle, a man that was credited for revitalizing the Detroit Lions offense, who has seen a consistent improvement each and every year with Ben Johnson as the offensive coordinator. And for the longest time, it was widely assumed that Ben Johnson was going to be the guy for the Washington Commanders. But something unique happened yesterday when Adam Schefter Schefter said this during the Pat McAfee show.
People have said here that they think Ben Johnson is going to Washington and Dan Quinn is going to Seattle. I will bet you that at a minimum, one of those is not right. Maybe both.
Whoa! Now, I personally felt like Ben Johnson to the Washington Commanders made a lot of sense. Originally, I thought Bill Belichick would make a lot of sense to the Commanders, but then I realized the Patriots coaching job and the Commanders coaching job were very, very similar, except the Commanders have way more pieces on offense and defense than the Patriots do. But the Washington Commanders have brand new ownership in Josh Harris. They've hired Bob Myers to be a consultant for the team as well. And Ben Johnson just fits the mold, a 37-year-old head coach that will get to go to this team that has $70 million in cap space, the number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft, and help build this team in his vision with Adam Peters, who is a stud general manager and also relatively young for an NFL executive. This seemed like a home run to me. To me, it was a foregone conclusion that Ben Johnson was going to be the next head coach for the Washington Commanders. When you look at what Ben Johnson was able to do for the Detroit Lions, the fact that the Detroit Lions made it all the way to the NFC Championship, the fact that they went out the way they did, including Dan Campbell saying that this could be their final shot, you also have to wonder whether or not this is the time to sell on the peak of your hype, on the peak of your value. Because there have been times in years past where top-tier offensive coordinators lost out on head coaching gigs just from staying in their position for too long. Individuals like Kellen Moore, who is the offensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys, wasn't able to net a head coaching gig, stayed an extra year for the Dallas Cowboys, got fired as their offensive coordinator, jumped ship to the Chargers, gets fired as their offensive coordinator there, is now the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. Another example would most definitely be Byron Leftwich, who was kind of being led on by the Jacksonville Jaguars. I remember when they famously put Leftwich's jersey up for sale on the team shop for purchase and then ended up going with Doug Peterson, which wasn't the wrong hire because at the end of the day, Byron Leftwich struggled when he returned to Tampa Bay as an offensive coordinator. But immediately, there's two things that come to my mind. Was this the right or wrong decision by Ben Johnson? I don't think there was a right or wrong decision here. You either go to Washington, team up with Adam Peters, who has a remarkable resume, team up with Josh Harris, and become the face of that franchise as you try to turn around a team that has been mired in mediocrity for almost 30 years, or you stay in Detroit and continue building something special as you aim to try to turn around a team that has also been mediocre for the past 20-something years, except for this past season. And each and every year, you guys are getting better and better and better. At the end of the day, Ben Johnson's only 37. I don't think you can make the wrong decision here. Yeah, sure, the Commanders have the number 2 overall pick. They have a lot of cap space. They have Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. They have Brian Robinson on the offense too. But at the same time, there may be some better head coaching openings next cycle. What if the Dallas Cowboys fire Mike McCarthy? What if the Philadelphia Eagles had enough of Nick Sirianni? What if the Chicago Bears draft Caleb Williams and fire Matt Eberflus after one bad season together? What if Andy Reid retires? There could potentially be even better head coaching opportunities next year. And at the end of the day, Ben Johnson is only 37, and that is the main reason why he informed the Detroit Lions that he's officially staying. According to Tom Pelissero, Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson informed the Seattle Seahawks and Washington Commanders that he's staying in Detroit. Johnson is only 37 and will be a hot head coaching candidate again next year. But first, he wants to take another shot at bringing a Lombardi trophy to Detroit. Adam Schefter mentions that Ben Johnson was not the head coaching lock that people thought, and his asking price spooked some teams per sources. For those of you guys that don't know, Ben Johnson asked for $15 million a year annually, which would make him the 3rd highest paid head coach. Well, 2nd highest paid head coach now that Bill Belichick was fired. But to give you an idea, Sean McVay makes $14 million a year annually. Now, this is an absolute nightmare scenario for the Washington Commanders. According to Schefter, Commanders officials were en route to Detroit for a meeting with Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn when they got word that Johnson was staying with the Lions, per sources. While the abrupt pivot by Johnson was considered surprising by several league sources, he was not considered a lock for the Commanders' job. Despite his strong reputation as a coordinator and a loyal coach, the Commanders' leadership team remains eager to meet with the respected Glenn, who is one of several candidates the team is expected to consider contender for its head coaching vacancy. It's kind of crazy how things changed for the Washington Commanders so much, and this is a nightmare scenario for the Washington Commanders because you waited this long, you missed out on other individuals that could have easily filled that same void and scratched the same itch that Ben Johnson would have scratched. Dave Canales, for instance, would have been an excellent hire here. And this is the problem with waiting for an offensive coordinator that makes it all the way to the NFC Championship. And here's the problem. The 5 remaining head coaching candidates that the Commanders could choose from are Mike Macdonald, Dan Quinn, Bobby Slowick, Aaron Glenn, and Anthony Weaver. That's only one offensive head coaching candidate in an era that you typically hire offensive head coaches in, which is why this is such a nightmare scenario. So Josina Anderson even mentions that the Washington Commanders just completed a follow-up interview with Dan Quinn a few hours ago, per source. But man, this was without a doubt the Washington Commanders' top candidate. At the end of the day, it's a very coveted job, and whoever gets to coach this team is going to be placed in a great situation. You're probably building around Drake May, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Brian Robinson. I mean, it's a really good base, and the general manager is absolutely incredible. But it definitely does suck if you are the Washington Commanders, because now you're in a nightmare scenario and you don't get to choose from your first choices anymore. My personal prediction is Bobby Slowick gets an opportunity here. The offensive coordinator of the Houston Texans, who certainly had a hand in CJ Stroud's development this year and bursting onto the scene. If I was the Commanders, I would try to hire the most prominent offensive coordinator candidate in this cycle. Let me know in the comment section down below, who do you think the Commanders are going to hire next? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.